Today, we're diving into behavioral interviews, one of the most effective techniques for assessing candidates based on their past experiences. To help us break it down, I'm joined by Eva Dvořáková, an experienced recruiter, a talent acquisition specialist with a strong background in IT and tech hiring. Eva spent years helping companies attract, assess, and retain top talent. She specializes in designing effective recruitment processes, coaching hiring managers, and ensuring a great candidate experience. She knows firsthand how behavior interviews can uncover candidates' true potential and lead to better hiring decisions. In this episode, we'll discuss why this approach works, how to ask the right questions, and how HR professionals can conduct these interviews with confidence. Welcome, Eva, to Confident HR Podcast. I'm so happy to have you here as my very first guest.
All right. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah. And now, let's dive into our topic, shall we? And I'm curious, because the topic is behavioral interviews. So I'm curious, how do they differ from the traditional interview approaches?
Well, the reasoning behind behavioral interviews is that, if we want to predict your future behavior, and that is something that interests us when we're hiring you for some position in a company, then, the best predictor is your behavior in the past. So that's where we focus, and that's what we ask about. How did you behave in the past, maybe in similar situation that you can face in your new role? So I often say it's something like a detective work, right? Something like, what did you do yesterday afternoon around 5 p.m., right? So what did you do in the past in situations similar to this? Because behavioral approach treats this part of your past like, the part where like hard data is, right? When you ask hypothetical questions like what would you do in such situation, then from at least from behavioral point of view, it's rather a guesswork or something like using a crystal ball. So yeah, that in a nutshell, that's it.
Right. So you're kind of predicting the future based on real behavior
Yeah.
in the past. You're looking at a real situation in the past. Okay,
Correct.
that
Because
sense.
people very often tend to tell you in a good faith, in the best faith, how will they react in certain situation, right? Like, I will go to my boss and I will tell him very confidently why I deserve this raise, right? And we see that very clearly in our mind, how confident we are in that situation and all, the arguments we're using. And then we we kind of fail in that. Maybe we even don't go to that office, right? And we don't even cover that topic during the next meeting with our boss, because we will chicken out. We kind of there's something that stop us, and we would have sweared like 1 hour before that this is what's going to happen, right? So that is the reason behind behavioral approach. Like, people can tell us, some predictions about their future behavior, but there's no guarantee that it's going to happen. On the other side, if you already experience something like that, and if you already show that you are capable, of marching into your boss's office and asking for that raise you deserve, then that might tell us much more about your ability to do that again in the future.
Okay, so that would be the main difference from, let's say, case studies where you really speak hypothetically by hypothetical situations and how
Yeah.
would I react.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, case studies, they too have their benefit. It's not like, behavioral approach is the best. It's an approach we have there, and we can use, and it has its benefits. I also use case studies, and I like them because they have this potential to show us, how candidates think about, certain situations. How would they approach them? How can they apply their previous experience, on something they're facing just now. So in this sense, yes, it has its benefits. From behavioral point of view, we're still talking about, the fact that these things are a bit theoretical.
Right. So it's a piece in the puzzle, let's say.
Yeah,
It's
yeah, definitely.
okay. Right. Well, Eva, you have worked with many hiring managers you coach as well. So I'm curious, what have you noticed are the common mistakes of interviewers when they do this approach, and how can they avoid them?
Yeah. So I think that, as an interviewer, you can get ahead so much when you prepare yourself. And I don't mean necessarily before like each interview, preparing for hours and hours. I believe in competencies, in working with competencies, because that's where we actually can find this important information about what kind of behavior are we actually looking for. So what kind of questions should we ask? So I would really encourage everyone who is part of hiring team to think about what kind of behavior are we looking for, what kind of behavior should the most competent candidate have. And so that's the first thing. So prepare upfront. That's one of my recommendations. And then the other is like, don't ask too open or too general questions, too broad questions, because then you make a lot of room for candidates to handle the answer, in a way they feel capable or comfortable, right? So when we give too much room for the candidate, he or she can lead us in a direction that is not very useful. And again, that doesn't have to be some bad intention on candidate's side. They just have so much room, so they kind of go with the flow, and the flow might go in a direction that's not the one that we need. So again, I would suggest going into more detail and adding enough context, so the candidate kind of knows where we find ourselves and what we are actually asking about, because otherwise we might get lost somewhere where we don't want to be.
Right. So what I'm hearing is that it's you need to have a clarity
Yeah.
about what competency are you looking for,
Yes,
and how
exactly.
this competency can show up in a real life situation. Is that what you mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I think, and the best way how to cover that, even during preparation, or when we're already facing the candidate, is working with stories. I really like to do that when I'm looking for the right competencies, when I'm sitting with hiring manager or with hiring team. It's a lot about tell me a story about this position, about this role, when something went really, really wrong. Like, what happened, and what needed to be done in order to save the day. right? Or, tell me a story about someone who really excelled at that position, right? And that's the same, or that's very similar to things that I'm talking about with candidates, right? Tell me about, or tell me your story, right? Tell me a story about what happened when you were in a similar situation.
You just mentioned an interesting thing. You mentioned, tell me a story about a person who excelled in that situation. So it
Right.
doesn't have to necessarily be the candidate's own story. Does it make sense? Or do I understand that?
No, actually, I meant like this is question that is good for preparation phase, right? When I'm talking to the hiring manager or someone from the hiring team, right? Because not just candidates, but even positions, even job roles, they have their own history, right? Very often, right? When it's new, when it's not new position, then there was someone there before. And the hiring team might have some idea, what are they looking for based on their previous experience with someone else in that role. Of course, we can then find out that they want something different, right? That maybe they are hiring someone new because their experience with the previous person was not what they expected, or maybe the situation in the company changed, something happened in the market, or the company changed its structure or its strategy, and now there's need to find someone who will fit the role even better. So then we can of course talk about so what is different, like what changed, what kind of behavior is not gonna work anymore, right? Like maybe tell me about some situation that happened in the past that you don't want to take with you into future.
Okay. So what you're saying is that this approach can be useful even before the interview, when the hiring manager and the recruiter are actually agreeing or kind of formulating what they're looking for, what kind of competency they're looking for, how it showed up in their previous experiences, and then kind of looking at how they can also ask the candidate about it. Is that what
Yeah.
you mean?
Yeah, that is absolutely correct, because they can tell you something like, I really liked John's approach. Like John was our star when he was here, and then unfortunately he left. And we want to get ourselves our new John, right? And so then we can dig a bit deeper. So so what was it about John? What did he do to make such an impression, right? So what is the behavior? And I'm kind of, when this happens, then I'm kind of trying to extract the behavior and kind of get it away from the John persona, because there is, of course, because the new candidate, or the new colleague, it's not going to be John, right? It's going to be someone who is maybe similar, but it's not the same. And extracting the behavior and kind of moving it outside of John is also a way how I'm trying to help the new colleague to kind of not be in the position when you're trying to fill someone else's shoes, right? It's also a good way how to prepare a good terrain for someone who is starting cooperation with a company after someone who really left his or her mark, in especially in a very positive way, because then you will be measured against John, right? Consciously, unconsciously. So this way is we're kind of finding a way how to measure the new person against the behavior that John was capable of, not directly against John.
That's such an important thing, and it's very relevant when what you talk about separating the persona, as you mentioned, with the behavior, and talking about real situations, not just impressions and emotions, which of course matter as well. But that's where maybe the bias can get in the way when we are trying to find a new John and there's these expectations. But redirecting it into to the behavior and competences make much more sense for the new person.
Yeah, I think, of course, it has its flaws, but what I find is very useful about behavior is that it can be an antidote to labeling, right, and to stereotypes. We just have to kind of keep it separate from specific persons or types of person groups of people, because as people, we are very, very well programmed to identify patterns, right? So, of course, it naturally leads us, to believe or to see that, certain people are connected to certain behavior, but we just need to ask to be sure.
That's that's great. Well, I think thank you for the insight into what behavioral interviews are and what they can serve. We talk a little bit theoretically, but let's now look at how it can actually show up in real scenario. Or, well, it's a scenario, so it's a role play. But what we will do now is a very brief role play of candidate and a recruiter or a hiring manager. So I will be the candidate for a sales representative position. You are the interviewer who's going to ask me questions around the competence of resilience, mainly. And then we'll see how this developed.
All right. Okay. Right. So, well, Alana, thank you very much for agreeing to talk to me about some of your past experience. So since you already had your skin in the game and you are experienced, I suppose that you already found yourself in a situation when you were communicating with an angry client. Is that correct?
All right. Yeah, absolutely. There's been many cases like that. Of course, you always do your job as the best as you can, but mistakes happen.
Yeah, it's part of the job. I totally understand. So can you tell me about the last situation when that happened and you met an angry customer?
Right. So the first one that popped into my mind was this situation with a client who called us or called me personally, and he was extremely angry and frustrated because there was a system update and the system just failed completely, and his team didn't have access to key applications and whatnot. So he was really threatening me to cancel a subscription of our services, and he was very he was basically shouting at me, that asking for my manager, etc. It was very uncomfortable situation.
Well, that sounds uncomfortable. Yeah. So what did you do?
So at first I was shocked, right? It's not a pleasant feeling. But then because it's not been the first time something like that happened to me, I took a couple breaths. I listened to the client and asked him a couple more questions to understand the situation better. And it turned out that there's a temporary solution. So that's something that I implemented right away. And that gave me enough time to find actual solution together with my team. So luckily that there was a success. Yeah.
All right. Well, it's good. I'm glad to hear that, that you solved that situation eventually. So can you tell me what you observed in that situation? What was the particular thing that you said or did that calmed the client down?
Yeah. So one thing that really helped was when I actually named his emotion, because he was shouting. He told me that he's frustrated. So I kind of mirrored this back to him, saying like, yes, I completely understand you're frustrated. This is not an okay situation for your team, and I understand how difficult it is. So by really staying with the client in that position, even though it was very uncomfortable for me.
Right.
Yeah, but still being able to take a moment and stay there helped us to find a solution together in the end.
Okay, that's really a great job, and so what I hear is also that you are able to calm yourself down, when you are in the midst of all of this, someone being really frustrated, angry, shouting at you. So what are some other techniques that you use and that you have experienced that work really well when you need to kind of decompress after a call like that?
Okay, so yeah, after the call, what helped me, what was the support from the team and my manager. We had a very good relationship back then, so I was able to kind of have a brief one-on-one, just sharing, kind of venting a little bit, and yeah, so I wasn't alone in that situation afterwards, so that was great.
All right. Cool. Well, I'm very glad to say that we too have a very supportive team here. So, in this case, I think that this would be very helpful and supportive environment for you too. Okay, so thank you very much for sharing that piece of information and for sharing that story. And okay, so we can move on to the next topic.
Okay, excellent. So that's the end of the
Right.
scenario.
Yeah, thank you for being such an amazing candidate. Okay.
Well, yeah, it's when we know what to do, it's easy. The question is, if I were actually in that situation, it might be different.
Yeah, I mean, that's the magic of behavioral interviews as well. That's how you can kind of discover sometimes or get the hunch that maybe the candidate it's not reporting about something they really went through. Because and that is also why I encourage my colleagues to kind of ask for details, because well, that's where the devil lies, right? Like that's how you can discover that there might be something off, right? It doesn't have to be that the candidate is lying to you, right? I mean, just I have to put a disclaimer here, like that is not a guarantee, that someone is trying to play you in a bad way. However, it is a strong signal that something's not right, or something is there that is making the candidate not very sure about his or her answers, and you can work with that.
Right. So it's important not to stick with not to stay with just a first opening question about the situation, but to ask a couple of probing questions.
Yes, exactly. Like the main question, of course, that is something that sets the scene, right? That's something that can influence very, very much where the conversation will lead, what will happen in the next minutes. So that is very important, and that is something we can prepare upfront. That is something we should prepare, even to ask the same or similar questions everyone during the hiring process, to keep it fair and to keep it balanced. But then, of course, every candidate reacts, in a different way, and we need to work with follow-up questions and with probing questions as well.
Right. So just to kind of recap the questions that you asked, and I really like them, because as you mentioned before, right, you were asking about a real situation in the past, leading with, could you describe a situation? So kind of tell me a story about a situation. recent ones so that it doesn't have to be like long ago. And what you also asked was, what was the step? What were the steps that you took to solve the situation?
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense as well. I'm wondering if you've encountered some common mistakes that people do when they try to do these types of interviews. But yeah, something is off, or they're not really getting there.
Well, I would say that the common mistakes, I already mentioned that in my previous answers. Like, of course, there is this kind of there's this thing of not getting like deep enough, right? Like being satisfied with staying on surface with very general answer. Even in this situation, right? You could have said, I just spoke to the client, and eventually he calmed down, and in the end it was a success. And on my side, then a mistake would be reaction like, okay, so thank you very much, so let's go to the next question, right? Like, okay, so we covered that, everything, there was a story with with some hiccups you actually solved, and all done, everything good, so now we can move on, right? But that's actually not what I'm interested in, right? The really like nourishing part of that interview is in the detail, right? So what exactly did you do? Like, what did you say, right, to the client? Like, what was the particular magic you've used? Because that's how I can make impression of that. That's how I can decide whether you are compatible with what we are looking for or not. Because there are also many ways how to successfully solve some situations, and some of them might be more compatible with the way how we do things in our company, and what are our values, or what are our processes, or whatever. And some of them, might not be that compatible, and that could create not just some errors in the future, but of course it could put us as a company, or even you as a candidate, in a very uncomfortable situation, right? When we would force you into behaving in a way that's not natural to you, or in a way where your strength is not so big. So yeah, that's when I need to know. That's why I need to dig a bit deeper. And when I don't do that, I'm kind of missing a big opportunity to learn very important things about yourself. And of course, also any arguments that I can use in discussions with the rest of hiring team, they can stay kind of empty, right? Like when, because, for example, when I want to support you, because you're my favorite candidate, I see you as someone who is the most compatible person with what we're looking for, then of course I'm going to be using some arguments for your support. Like, I think that she can solve stressful situation, or she can handle difficult clients very well. And the hiring manager can ask me, okay, so what makes you think that? And then if I don't dig deeper, it's just like, well, she told me so. Right? Like this, that I kind of stand there empty-handed with no real data I can provide to kind of build your case. Right? But, based on what you already told me during this role play, I can say something like, she can really empathize. She's not afraid to kind of bring up the fact that the client is angry. She's able to be transparent in this way. So, and that works really well with the client, right? Because, if you would have explain the client that he's not really that angry, like that situation is not that bad, right? Then, it would have created some sort of mayhem, right? Because clients don't want to hear that. This is a like red flag, right? For them. So yeah, I mean, you provided me, with enough data I can use for your support, or to kind of illustrate why you are compatible in this area with what we're looking for, or why you are not compatible. Right.
Right. So that's very well put. So the story is just a context. It's just starting point to dig deeper into the process, about the way the candidate thinks about the situation, how they deal with the situation, what they've actually done. That makes a lot of sense. One thing that you asked me in this scenario as well was, so how do you handle the situation afterwards? I think it's great that it can be a starting point to see a little bit bigger context, right? So what the candidate, how the candidate fits culturally within the possible position.
Yeah. Because, the discussion we might have had earlier, before we even started interviewing candidates, might be something like, this product that the person will be selling and supporting, right? It's a new product, and there are some errors. We have relatively high number of clients calling in and being angry and being frustrated. So there is a lot to handle for our customer care representatives, right? So we need someone who is capable of not just handling like one stressful situation, in a relatively long period of time, but we actually need someone who is able to kind of take this on daily basis. And of course, we might have some support system, but we actually need someone who will work with us and who will be able to support and maintain themselves on long term.
Right.
And that kind of asks for some capability to know what works for me. So how do I decompress? How do I take care of myself when I spend half a day being shouted at?
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, that a simple story can be a starting point for looking at different aspects of this candidate's way of dealing with a situation, and communicating and relying on, or being proactive in cooperating with the team members, etc. Right.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for leading this role play in scenario. I'm wondering if you have any tips or advice for companies or HR professionals who maybe tried behavioral interviews in the past but would like to go a little bit deeper into it. You mentioned preparation is key, so that's definitely one thing. What other steps can they take, or where they can find more information about this approach?
Well, first thing, I think that the topic of behavioral interviews is quite widely covered. There are many sources that you can just look out. I mean, there's no rocket science behind that, so I don't want to kind of push it down. I'm just saying that so I encourage people who are interested in conducting behavioral interviews. I mean, just do it and find some information, and then learn through the process, and it's just totally fine. And you can find also support, of course. Here in the Czech Republic is a great organization, so HR. I cooperate with them. My topic is behavioral interviews, so that is one thing. Then, of course, you can find many podcasts. Again, here in the Czech Republic, Nelidské zdroje, for example, is one of the podcasts. But there are, of course, some international podcasts or podcasts in English for recruiters. So you can, of course, gain even more information, not just about behavioral interviewing. In the terms of preparation, what I would really, really root for, and what I would really recommend to deliver great candidate experience or even hiring team experience, regardless of you doing behavioral or different kind of interviews, is like I really believe in cooperation between HR professionals, recruiters, or HR team and hiring managers, because we've talked about the stories and identification of crucial behavior that is needed to have someone successful in the role. And as HR professionals, it's very hard to find or figure out on our own, because we are experts when it comes to the process, right? When it comes to the method. But we need, someone who is really there, who is, like at least ankle deep, in the team, and who really knows the position and knows the circumstances that we might not see. So to really perform well when it comes to hiring and when it comes to interviewing candidates, we need to connect these two worlds, right? Like business side of the whole process, and then the HR side that is there to support and to kind of lead through the whole process, and to set it up in a way that it provides great experience, not just for candidates, but also for hiring managers and the teams inside the company. Because yes, we have external clients, candidates, but then we have also a lot of internal clients, and we need to cooperate to take care of them properly.
Right. So what I'm hearing is that in order to even identify the competences and how they should show up within the company, we actually need to reach out to the hiring managers, to the teams, and ask them, how does it, what does it mean to you when this person is this or that, or when this person is able to do this or that? So then,
exactly. Apart from stories, I also like to work with metaphors. And when I talk about this, I always say, like, to a hiring manager, imagine that you came to me, you gave me some budget, and you told me, buy me a car. And that was it, right? So then I'm sitting there, right, with a bunch of money, thinking, okay, so like what kind of car? And I might spend so much time and effort, finding out many information. So what is the best car on the market, right? And then, okay, so what would I buy, right? What do I see as a perfect choice? And then I could, after a few weeks, present the hiring manager with, I don't know, tada, Volkswagen Passat, right? Because according to me, a great managerial car, right? Like, nice. And then, there might be the hiring manager scratching his ear. right? Like, okay, but I wanted to go with that car to my lake house. It's in the woods, right? I was imagining something like, Land Rover or something like that. Why is it not 4x4? Right? Or it might be something like, well, but I imagined, something with hybrid motor, with hybrid engine, right? Because that's my value. I want to take care of the environment, for example, right? And in the end, we are both very frustrated, right? Hiring manager is not getting what he wanted, and I'm feeling like the situation is not fair because I really tried. I worked very hard to get a car that is great, right? But it's not compatible with what the manager needs. And I'm not, like living with that manager. I might not know that much about his life, to be really sure what he needs.
Right. So it takes a lot of information, communication, and being really explicit about the needs of the team, needs of the manager.
Assumptions can kill a lot of opportunities.
That's well said. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, Eva, for diving with us and guiding us through this topic of behavioral interviews. And where can people find you in case they would like to work with you or ask you more questions, possibly? Or how can you support them if there's something that you do?
Yeah. Well, I think the best way is to reach out to me via LinkedIn. So I have a LinkedIn profile. So feel free to get in touch with me. Feel free to follow me. I regularly share information, not just on the topic of behavioral interviews, but also if you are a highly sensitive person, or if you cooperate with someone who you think might be highly sensitive, then you can, of course, get some information on that too. Feel free to send me a message to connect with me, and I'll be there and prepared to share some my experience and some of my wisdom.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And have a great day. Well,
thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for listening to Confident HR Conversations. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't hesitate to reach out to me with any questions, feedback, or suggestions.
If you are an HR professional who wants a safe space to practice speaking in English, join our Confident HR Speaker community. We meet twice a month to discuss real HR topics, expand our vocabulary, and gain the confidence to express ourselves. Plus, you'll be supported and inspired by a group of other HR professionals who share your struggles and goals. Check the link in the description to sign up. Bye-bye.